Hey guys, it's me. Today I'm going to read Threefold Section 2, the rest of Part 2. I won't start Part 3 today, I'll just do it tomorrow. So we're going to finish up Part 2 and then we'll be on our way. So let's go ahead and dive in. The rest of Part 2, this is the fight Hugo versus Takashi, Part 2. Because he fought him earlier, part 1. So this is part 2 of that. Okay, I'm gonna get started. You're wanted for murder, young man, Takashi said to Hugo. I'll have to apprehend you. Takashi took his double-barreled firearm into his hand. Hugo pulled stones from the prison on both sides of the bridge and created a walkway on either side of it. When Takashi aimed and fired, Hugo jumped from the bridge to the walkway on his right. He ran down the walkway while pulling stones from the prison to hover them around the battleground, leaving some on their own and forming platforms with the others. He pulled many of them together to form a platform and leapt onto it as Takashi shot streams of light from his firearm and destroyed the walkway. Hugo pulled it back together as he jumped back onto the bridge and ran toward Takashi. He watched Takashi wave his left hand and cause multiple spears of light to fly through the air, presumably drawing on the light of the moon. He dived off the bridge to his left walkway. As the spears exploded in the air at Takashi's command, they took some of his stones with them. He watched the bridge knowing if he destroyed it, the battle would be over, but he wouldn't go that route. Takashi would experience a long fall before the jagged rocks below mangled his body. Takashi fired more streams of light from his firearm and unleashed more spears of light. He kept him on the move, preventing him from concentrating on his plan. Hugo traveled from stone to stone and from platform to platform, trying to get close to Takashi while devising a different plan. His first plan had entailed encasing Takashi in stone, but before he could do that, he would have to disarm him and place his hands in a restraint. He remembered Takashi's defensive screens. He jumped to another platform, barely avoiding a stream of light that passed right by his body. His new plan? If he couldn't encase Takashi, he would knock him unconscious. The best way to get close to him would be to allow him to capture him. For that plan to work, his pyro energy might help, except he could rarely do anything with it. This probably wouldn't be the best time to put it to the test either. Takashi used more spears to destroy as many stones and platforms as he could, and Hugo was running out of resources without causing either side of the prison to collapse. He began to hurl stones at him. Takashi blocked them with defensive screens, as expected. At the same time, Hugo gathered as many stones as possible and created a hovering wall. He had to move quickly before Takashi blasted it apart. He jumped on his wall and moved it as fast as he could toward Takashi. Takashi began to blast holes in it as Hugo curved it around the entire bridge and held it in place. The stones, platforms, the walkways, and the wall, the abundant use of his geoenergy began to tire him. He glanced through one of the holes Takashi made to find exactly where he was. Once he had his position, he ran toward it as Takashi shot streams of light. He opened a hole right above Takashi and jumped through it to land on him. Takashi leapt back and shot a ring of light at Hugo, which restrained his legs after he had stood up. Hugo fell onto the bridge. Takashi placed his firearm into its holster and shot Hugo in the chest with Physon energy. Hugo hadn't thought Takashi would do that as he struggled to hold the earthen cone together. Holding everything together caused him a lot of pain, but he parted the cone so it, along with everything else, would fall apart around the bridge to the jagged rocks below. He let a few pieces fall onto the bridge. He lay on it, keeping still, but breathing heavily. Takashi walked toward him. I'll admit, you gave me a slight challenge, Takashi said. I haven't faced a geoenergist since my younger days. Hugo eyed the debris on the bridge. Takashi hitting him with Physon energy made using his geoenergy unbearable, but he couldn't let Junyo face him. He concentrated on lifting one of the stones. Trying to do it brought pain to his entire body, but none of the stones moved. Takashi placed a ring of light around Hugo's neck, hands, and torso before raising him from the ground. Hugo couldn't lift his head or clearly see because of how hard he tried to focus on lifting Earth against the Faizan effects. "I'll take you to a cell below," Takashi said. "Gather Junyo after Shinjiro finishes with him. I don't know you, but if you're with Junyo, you must not be that bad a young man. Junyo doesn't trust anyone outside his family." Hugo shut his eyes through the pain. "I'm sorry." "What?" Takashi lifted Hugo's head. Apparently, Takashi hadn't heard him. "I said, I'm sorry." He hit Takashi in the head and back with a stone block. Takashi dropped to his knees, disoriented, and he dropped to the bridge free from his restraints. He didn't knock him unconscious, but he didn't want to hit him too hard, causing real harm. He immediately restrained Takashi's head, neck, wrists, torso, and legs with pieces of the stone that had fallen on the bridge. He lay on the bridge and took deep breaths, waiting for the Faizan effects to wear off a bit. He breathed hard and fast. His blood felt like it might drain out of his body at any minute. While he recovered, Takashi struggled against his restraints, failing to break free of them. After a few minutes, he stood up and walked toward him. "You're not as weak as I thought," Takashi said. "You're not the first to underestimate me," Hugo said. He remembered their conversation from earlier. "I'm innocent. I know you find that hard to believe, but I'm only here to help Junyo." Now that the Faizan effects had worn off, he lifted Takashi by his restraints. "He didn't want to face you." Right as Takashi was about to break from them, he let the restraints fall away. This action confused and surprised Takashi. Hugo answered his unasked why question. "According to Akira, Junyo, and their mother, you're not the bad guy here." "You're correct," Takashi said slowly. "Shinjiro is responsible for a lot of Kasadea's trouble." Takashi held a hand to his head. "I realized that a long time ago, but my head..." He proceeded to rub his temples. "Sorry about that," Hugo said. An explosion sounded that grabbed their attention. He and Takashi turned toward the administration offices. "Junyo's fighting him now. I should get up there. Akira doesn't want Junyo to kill him." He took a few steps before Takashi grabbed his arm. He faced him. "He's a mentalist," Takashi said. "He has the ability to control and manipulate other people's minds. He's had me in this fog for years, using my grief against me to control me. Your hit to my head must have snapped me out of it, and Junyo must be giving him one hell of a fight if his control is waning." "Again," Hugo said, "sorry about that." "Don't worry about it," Takashi said. "You did me a favor." Hugo remembered the differences between mentalists and telepaths. Telepaths could make you think what they wanted, but mentalists could control you and make you act according to their will. That makes sense. He recalled what he'd heard about Shinjiro. Making those he works for disregard the complaints of the people would have them believe he's doing a good job. It also explains why your speech and actions didn't always line up. "He planted commands and instructions in my head," Takashi said. "I couldn't think straight. I couldn't..." Takashi was going to finish his sentence, but Hugo interrupted him. "Let's worry about that later," Hugo said, hearing and turning toward the multiple explosions in the administration offices. "You're right," Takashi said. Hugo ran across the bridge toward the administration building to reach Shinjiro's office and Junyo. Takashi followed, speaking into his radio. "All guards, stand down and return to your posts. We are coming off lockdown. I will handle the current situation on my own from here on out." Hugo ran into some guards. They looked confused. From the looks of them, the mind manipulation on guards all over the prison began to wane. "Where's his office?" Hugo asked Takashi. "Down this corridor and up the stairs at the end of it," Takashi said. "You go. I'll catch up after I explain the situation to them." "Sounds good," Hugo said, but don't be too long. You might be the only one able to get through to him. Maybe, Takashi said. Hugo ran down the corridor. He passed by unconscious guards and the wreckage of metal gates. Junyo had definitely been this way. Maybe not, a man said as he turned left and climbed the stairs. Hugo heard these words, but they didn't come from Takashi. He didn't dwell on it. He didn't stop. He kept going. All right, that was the end of part 2. I'm going to read part 3 tomorrow. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, please feel free to leave a message and I will respond to them either in the comment section or in a future video. All right, I appreciate your listening and hopefully I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.